is Dalinda Reese from Waterloo. Dalinda, welcome. You have the podium and you have 5 minutes.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you. I am Dalinda Reese, a Waterloo resident, a retired U.S. medical doctor with training and clinical experience, years of practice in internal medicine, anesthesiology, and integrative medicine. I'm a conscientious dual citizen. I'm also a mother and grandmother with family who live in the Waterloo region. My whole life has been dedicated to health and well-being. I want you to understand this. Living water brings forth life. Poisoned water leaves death, disease, and destruction in its wake. Do you know what it's like to live with the consequences of poisoned water? I do. I never met my father-in-law. He died of poisoned water on Super Bowl Sunday in 1968. His death was a factor in my mother-in-law's death 5 years later. My husband lost both parents before he was an adult. I never knew my in-laws, and our children have been deprived of knowing their paternal grandparents. Those are some of the consequences when in 1966, the Allied Chemical Corporation, Hopewell, Virginia, began dumping its chemical wastes into the James River. Despite concerns, it was not until December of 1975 that the Allied Chemical plant was closed and fishing bans and advisories were ordered. The fishing industry was decimated, and the economic, medical, and environmental toll were significant. The Encyclopedia Virginia specifically notes, and I quote, "Local, state, and federal authorities overlooked safety regulations or made exceptions in large part because chemical production was Hopewell's biggest industry." Dark Waters is the 2019 movie in which Mark Ruffalo stars as Rob Billett, the lawyer who took on a decades-long legal suit against one of the most powerful corporations in the U.S. It tells the true story of the devastating effects of industrial chemical contamination of water, soil, and the aquifer in Parkersburg, West Virginia. Please know that to this day, those forever chemicals persist and continue to plague numerous communities along the Ohio River. Dark Waters portrays not only the health and environmental harms, but also depicts the very, very complicated social, political, and legal landscape in which an industry can co-opt and exploit a community in the name of economic growth and security. It also illustrates the great lengths to which such industrial giants can go and will go to hide the data, to squelch investigations, and the extent to which megacorporations can and will use legal and/or political means and loopholes in their attempts to evade any responsibility for actions. Whether it's the health and human harms caused by the decades-long poisoning of the water in Hinckley, California, as exposed by Aaron Brockovich, or whether it's the very convoluted century-and-a-half-long story of contaminated water, soil, and air of the Love Canal in Niagara, New York, the issues are the same and the harms are real. Moneyed interests extract their profits and leave the people to deal with the tragedies and the fallout. This goes on in Canada, too. Consider the water contamination and public health disaster in Walkerton, Ontario in May of 2000. Improper practices and systemic fraudulence were found to be among the factors leading to the Walkerton tragedy. And let's not forget our neighbor, Elmira. For whatever chemical, industrial, and economic gains were realized through the years, it's clear, going back at least as far as the 1960s, that residents noticed promise and that Elmira has suffered from the contamination of its aquifer by deadly chemicals. It wasn't until 1989...
Dalinda, you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you. It wasn't until 1989 that the people in Elmira officially learned that they couldn't drink the water or even eat the vegetables in their gardens. All these years later, expensive cleanup efforts continue, and Elmira depends on water from the Waterloo region. The James River, Virginia, Dark Waters in Parkersburg, West Virginia, and the Ohio River Valley, Hinckley, California, the Love Canal in Niagara, New York, Walkerton, Ontario, Elmira, Ontario. What do these have in common? In each case, private interests, often supported by government, extracted their profits at the cost of public well-being. As a Waterloo resident and as a Canadian citizen, it's my obligation to ask, with respect to the decision-making about the Wilmot Land Assembly, and especially as concerns our water, how will you be transparent? How will you be accountable? And how will you protect public well-being? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dalinda, for taking the time. Please, no applause. Jazz of hands is great. Thank you very much. I see no questions.